Hi everybody, Meteorologist Joe Cioffi here on this Thursday, the 17th of January 2019, where we seem to have quite the winter storm that's beginning to brew, and we're setting up the table with a long stretch of winter storm watches that run from the Central Plains on across the Midwest and the northern areas of the Ohio Valley, and then through a good chunk of the Northeast. And before this is all said and done, especially for the ski areas and the inland areas in upstate New York and on up through central and northern New England, we're talking 1 to 2 feet of snow out of this. This is a system that's come into California, and the Sierra Nevadas getting pounded by snow. We were looking at forecasts there a couple of days ago of 80 to 100 inches, which is just almost incomprehensible. Here we're talking about 1 to 2 feet for areas up to the north. As you head up through upstate New York and New England, which happens, it's a little less common as you go further south. But the southern areas, it gets kind of tough when we have 4, 5, or 6 inches. I think the big issue for my area, which is eastern Pennsylvania through southern New England, but particularly as we get down closer to the coast, I'm struggling not so much with the amount of snow. I think the amount of snow on the southern end of this is going to really pretty much hinge on whatever we get on the front end as the storm makes its initial approach. It's what happens after we lose the bottom layers of the atmosphere when that warms up, where we see the snow changing over to rain. Where is that 32-degree line going to go? How far north is it going to get? I think there's a chance that you could see that 32-degree line barely make it north of New York City, or it might not even make it through New York City and western Long Island. So that might bring some significant icing down to the coast. So my concern is that zone from there northward to perhaps the Middle Hudson Valley, from north of Poughkeepsie northward, where it is going to be all snow. That stretch will run down through eastern Pennsylvania, maybe even down into north central Maryland, where we might be dealing with freezing rain. The ground temperatures may have a really, really tough time getting above 32. The other thing is, after daybreak Sunday morning, bitter cold air is going to begin to sweep in on northerly winds, and we're going to see temperatures drop below freezing Sunday morning, so that by lunchtime a lot of areas are going to be in the 20s, and by the time we get to in the nighttime hours, we'll be down in the teens, and by Monday morning we're going to be in the single digits, in some places below zero. So it's quite a stretch of interesting weather, a roller coaster ride that we are going to be setting up. Let me just really quick welcome those of you watching from the SS Storm Chase and Forecast team page, for which I do some work on. We welcome aboard. The video, we got a lot of folks here from all different parts of the country, so we're covering a large area. If as an option, I did put on your link, you can click to my website and pull up all the National Weather Service snow forecast maps, including the snow forecast for your particular area. I also want to say hi to those from the Angry Ben's Angry Weather Facebook page, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut Stormwatch page, Meteorologist Jeff Banson's Facebook page, and my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Cioffi. Joe Rao, I thought he would have been in by now, but apparently he's not. So, you know what? Why don't we call him? Let's see. All right, there's your first ring. There's your second ring. Is Rayo there? Can you remind him that it's after 7 o'clock and he's supposed to be sitting here next to me in the studio on YouTube? Oh, okay. Thank you. Bye. He must have got hung up on something, but he's on his way. So we'll give him a minute. In the meantime, let's go through the winter storm watches that are up. I'm going to show you my forecast that I have, and we'll also go through the Weather Service forecast as well. So let's start off with the winter storm watches because they are extensive, and there they go. It's not often that you see a stripe of winter storm watches that include Chicago, Cleveland, Buffalo, and New York City, but not Philadelphia. I'm sorry, but you've got a large stretch there of winter storm watches going from almost back to the Central Plains. We have actually some winter storm warnings that are up this evening for parts of eastern South Dakota into southern Minnesota and northern Iowa, and a few counties in northwestern Illinois, and they're getting ready. And as we go out to the west, we have some winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings up for much of the Colorado Rockies, back over through Wyoming, Utah, and in through Nevada. We lost the blizzard warnings in northeastern California. They've been downgraded to a winter storm warning. So my guess is that the blizzard conditions have let up. And then on up to the north, we've got some various advisories across parts of Montana and a small strip of them in the mountains of Washington State. But certainly, very busy. And in the east, the winter storm watches stretch through much of Indiana and Ohio, except the southern part of Ohio, all of Pennsylvania except the southeast, all of New York State, all of New England, half of Long Island under a winter storm watch, northwest Suffolk County, and Nassau County, and also New York City under a winter storm watch, as well as northern New Jersey. And then we have winter weather advisories back, and this is for tonight's weather system in southeastern Pennsylvania and on back through northeastern Maryland. This system, this first one, is a relatively minor one. We can you'll get this out of the way and do this first really fast. But you've got a couple of bands of snow beginning to work through. This is going to put down coating to maybe an inch or two. It's actually, the system here really is part of the process of setting the table for the next one, which is the one for Saturday into Sunday. And back through the Rockies, we've got some snows there. You get a lot of action from all that storminess that's been impacting California. And now we're getting some impact up in Washington State with some heavy rains moving in to the coastal areas of Washington and northwestern Oregon. And then you've got your snows down in the central Rockies, and you're still getting this patchy heavy rain that's going on through parts of California. So this is just going to run its course for my area. Again, eastern Pennsylvania to back up into parts of Maryland. We're talking about a coating to a couple of inches tops and then done. There are some rain showers down through the Carolinas and even some heavier rain showers. Might be a thunderstorm or two in there popped in. Kind of looks like there might be one here right along the South Carolina, North Carolina border. And then down to through Florida, it's all very, very quiet. So at least we got that part out of the way with respect to the current weather. Now let's go to the storm system that we're going to be dealing with, and this is my early forecast call. And I hear Joe coming through the door now, so I'll just wait for him to come in. Hi.
Hello there.
You got hung up?
Are we on?
Yes.
Oh, we're on right now. Okay.
So yeah,
Yes,
you got hung up. All right, gotcha.
I had some problems.
You had issues. Okay. So I just kind of got some of the. I got the current weather out of the way because the focus now really is going to shift on this storm. This is my early forecast call, Joe, that I made. So for the area that Joe and I are involved with, snow is not the big issue here. The big issue is going to be once we get the changeover to once the snow change is over. How far north is that 32-degree line going to get? Because there are, that is a big question. Is it going to make it, pretty far to the north before up to say Route 84 before it drops back southward? Does it get stuck right at New York City? In which case that might bring icy conditions pretty far to the south into the metro area of New York City. But I'm thinking on the front end, Joe, I've got the southern edge of 2 inches on a line from across northeastern Maryland, north and west of Baltimore, to just north and west of Philadelphia to about Trenton, Sandy Hook, cutting Long Island on a diagonal, the east end a bit lower, and then to southeastern New England. And then I have the 5-inch line running across, west of 287 in northern New Jersey, and then north and east of there, just south of Route 84, maybe between 84 and 15, moving northeastward. And then I kind of went for an 8, and I figured where the 0 degree isotherm, the freezing line at 850 was, I figured that would be maybe the southern edge of 12.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I laid it out.
Well, I would agree with you. I've seen forecasts that have been suggesting that there might be upwards to over 12 inches in the northern sections of our viewing region, and I kind of disagree with that. I think really quite a bit of the precipitation, quite a bit of the snow is going to get mixed in with sleet, not necessarily freezing rain. I noticed that the folks down at the Weather Prediction Center in Washington have put a 30% chance or a low probability chance of a 1/4 of inch or more of ice accretion in and around the tri-state area. And their reasoning is that this is going to be more of a sleet event in terms of ice rather than freezing rain, which is a good news, because the last thing you would want is a 1/4 of an inch of ice or more, let's say on trees and power lines, which could bring down a lot of power lines and could cause a lot of problems in terms of power outages in and around the region. Sleet, of course, just hits and bounces, so to speak. And the other good point is that.
And by the way, I just put up the map of the from Upton for New York City. The forecast for ice accumulation of up to 1,500.
Right. Now, but I just mentioned that the 30% chance of a 1/4 of an inch or more. This is less than a 1/4 of an inch. So, but I think that the good news is that we get some snow first, and then we get this ice with this possible glaze on top of the snow. Because if you start off with ice on the roadways or on many of the power lines and trees or whatever like that, that's going to cause real problems. Not to say that this is not going to be a problem with the glaze on top of the snow, but it may be a little bit more manageable. You're looking at the devil's advocate here, which is going to be the worst case scenario or whatever. But no matter which way you slice it or dice it, it's going to be rough from Saturday night into at least the first part of Sunday. And then, of course, we watch as the winds start to rev up later in the day, Sunday and Sunday night, and pull down what has to be some of the coldest air we've seen here in quite a few winters.
The snow amount. I've got the map up. These are the Weather Service snow plots for New England, the Northeast. We'll take you all over the place, folks. So we'll start. I'll go to the southern end for those that are on from Maryland and from southern Pennsylvania. You're generally in a 1 to 3, 2 to 4 inch zone, which is I'm kind of okay with that. I'm comfortable with that. But once you go north of Harrisburg, you go north of Route 76, and particularly once you get north of Route 80 in Pennsylvania, then you're starting to talk about 1 foot plus amounts and maybe even some 1.5 foot plus amounts going north and west. And that large area of 1 foot to 1.5 feet runs through a good chunk of upstate New York, on up through Vermont, New Hampshire, northwestern Mass, and on up into New England. The snow drought in Boston and in southeastern Massachusetts and even in Rhode Island, though those areas haven't seen anything since the November 15th storm, much like us, forecast to get at least 6 in Boston. The Weather Service is going for a 3 to 6 inch snowfall for New York City. I don't know, a lot of what you see here on the southern end is going to depend on the front end developments. And sometimes, Joe, as you know, the thump. And sometimes, as you know, that front end development can be really, really robust, like the November one was.
Right.
That produced 6 to 12 in a lot of areas. And then you have the kinds of front end bumps that look like they're going to do it, and then they fall far short. So we'll see. We still have a couple of, we have a number of model runs to still chew through, and it's Thursday night, so we're talking by this time Saturday night. It's probably going to be snowing through a good chunk of this area, except up in New England, but it will be getting underway. We'll know soon enough if it's going to be a pretty good thump.
Well, it looks like on this particular map from the Weather Service that they're calling for the foot or more region north of the I-84 corridor, and from I-84 south to Interstate 287 in the lower Hudson Valley, something on the order of 5 to 9 inches, and then south of there, something, well, actually, so they, as you mentioned, Joe, they have the 6, apparently right in the New York City metropolitan area.
Right.
And they have a 4 where it appears Islip MacArthur Field is. So I guess they're considering
they went a bit aggressive on the thump.
On the thump, yeah.
Let me pull up let's see what we'll load the ice map, because it's on that southern flank from Maryland on up through southern New England. That ice is going to be an issue, and it's loading. It likes to take its time. Okay, there we go. So here is, we'll get tight, and the area that's being indicated. So this is, again, the struggle of the 32-degree line is huge, and there's some areas that are forecasting a quarter of an inch, even in parts of Rhode Island and northeastern Connecticut, up to a third of an inch of ice. So right in this zone. So just north of here is where the rain-snow line will probably come to a grinding halt, the snow-ice line, I should say. And then just south of here, that's where we're talking the ice-rain line. So there is significant accretion of ice being forecast all the way down from Connecticut, south and west across the northern half of New Jersey, north and west of the Turnpike, down through Pennsylvania, not into Philadelphia, but definitely into Allentown, includes Harrisburg, Reading, Lancaster on the edge of that ice, and then running back into western Maryland, north and west of Baltimore, northwestern Virginia, and even down into western Virginia and northeastern West Virginia, if we got that all in there.
But again, the differential now, are we talking about sleet versus freezing rain? Again, two different types. Of ice. And up in the Boston area, and those forecasts were by, I presume, the people at the Boston National Weather Service. Again, that goes above what the guys down in Washington were suggesting. I like looking at the Washington forecast, the World Weather Prediction Center, because they're unbiased. They do not have. They look at everybody evenly.
Right.
And I would assume that if they thought, as the Boston forecasters do, that they were going to get as much as a third of an inch of ice, and if that was from freezing rain, that they would have had an indication of that on some of their maps, but they didn't. They have low probability.
Well, let's hope that it's more sleet than freezing rain, and
it could be devastating, Joe. If you get a third of an inch of ice on power lines and trees, that is the worst.
That is quite a bit.
Yeah.
And let me go back to the snow maps so we can show the rest of the area that's going to get impact from this. And as it loads, kind of like watching that hourglass.
I got in late, of course, and so you already took care of the overnight situation coming up or early.
Yeah, that's all done.
And
which is minor.
It is kind of amazing that tomorrow morning could be still problematic for a lot of people, because we just have not had this any kind of significant frozen precipitation to deal with in over 2 months. So take it extra easy tomorrow morning on the roadways en route to work and school.
So I want to kind of illustrate the meteorological issue here with regards to this particular storm, and I want to go back to last night's European as an example, with dealing with where that freezing line is going to be. And I've put on here the track from last night versus the track from today. Last night's European was actually surprisingly south and east, which produced a fairly sizable snowfall for New York City last night on that run. It gave about 8.5 inches. the day run came in with the low right on the New Jersey coast, and it cut those amounts back to about 3 inches on some on the most of it on the front end, but even a little bit on the back end. But my point is, Joe, I've been arguing that the way the atmosphere to me is set up, even though the day run models went to that slightly more northwest track, I think we're at the point now where the models are, kind of zeroing in on where this is actually going to be. And I've been favoring the idea of a low moving across southern Virginia off the Maryland coast, and perhaps not, maybe it won't get to where the European has it, but it might be further east than where it had it this afternoon versus last night. And that's going to make a forecast difference for somebody in terms of where that freezing line goes.
Well, we're in the outer envelope now. We've been saying that we'd like to get within 84 hours of an event before we start really discussing these or assessing the potentials in terms of numbers, in terms of snow or ice or whatever like that. We're in that 84-hour time frame now, but it's still possible that tonight's run, tomorrow's run, even, my goodness, I mean, this is not even going to start until later Saturday.
Right, so we have time. There's going to be
tomorrow night's run.
There's going to be more ups and downs.
Yeah.
Snow weenies are going to be lining up at the edge of the cliff, ready to jump, and then tonight's run will come out, and they'll jump for joy because it'll do something in their favor, only to have the next run disappoint. Then they're back on the cliff again.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to the snow map now that it's loaded, because Chicago, it's not often that you have Chicago and New York City in a winter storm watch at the same time from the same storm, but because of the track of this, it kind of works out. But a foot is also expected for Chicago. Same for Cleveland. You've got Chicago, Cleveland, a half a foot forecast for in and around Detroit, even though they're not under a winter storm watch. But this is going to have impact over a large area. Much of Illinois, a couple of inches in the southern part of the state, up to a foot in and around Chicago. As we said, in Indiana, we're looking at about an inch or two in the south and 5 or 6 in the north, and even some accumulating snows across parts of Kentucky down to northern Tennessee. And then, again, also back through, not too much this time around, in western Virginia and into western North Carolina. Although Bertha Gunter, who's one of our regulars here on the YouTube channel, posted this afternoon to me that she's up in western North Carolina, and they had some rain and snow mixed where she was. And let's get a little wider. I want to go out to the west just to take a look at California to see how much additional snow they're supposed to get. But you can see the numbers populating. Some big snows in the Rockies forecast also. Still a lot of energy in the west that is coming in. And I feel like running the Jeopardy song right now, just waiting for it to load.
That Chicago snow we were just looking at, I would assume that the winds coming down across the lake could help enhance the snow amounts in the Windy City. I'm not too familiar with the.
I think it's a northeast wind that impacts Chicago with getting snow off the lake, and they don't get a northeast wind too often, but it does occur. Let's bring up. I'll bring up the surface map at least, since everything seems to be running at all the weather people are on all the websites at the same time, and it makes it problematic. They need to know that when I'm on doing my live stream, they should not be there. I mean, isn't that like a rule of some kind or something? All right, let me roll back. Well, I mean, the isobars are easterly, so the wind is coming in on a north, blowing into the low, so it's going to be a northeast wind. So yeah, that probably makes sense as to why they're going for as much as they're going with this weather system.
And the storm system then continues. The European had it at, and I noticed Joe has pointed this out to one of our colleagues here, Addison Green, that the 18Z GFS really is rocketing this thing. By the time we get to 1 o'clock,
we have it here. So we have it here. Actually, it brings the snow in faster into New York City has it almost to, but not quite to Boston, the leading edge of snow by 7 o'clock. So yeah, it seems like it's coming in about 3 or 4 hours faster, and probably means it's going out 3 or 4 hours faster if it's got the speed right.
Right, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the storm center is already near the Twin Forks of Long Island. Amazing. And up
That's
there,
it. That's I'm sorry. That's at 7 a.m. That's at 7 a.m.
That's a
Sunday.
7 a.m. position?
Yeah. At 1 p. Well, this is where it gets dicey for Sunday, if you believe the GFS, because of the fact that the whole thing is getting stretched out.
Right.
You've got that lead low is at Montauk, but the isobars are pulled back down to North Carolina. There's a second wave that develops,
Yeah.
and I think this is why the GFS generates this back end sleet and snow into Sunday afternoon. Because this is at 1 o'clock Sunday afternoon. It should
Right.
probably be coming to an end around noontime.
Right.
Because that's accumulated precip. But it suggests that there's a change back that's going to happen because this whole thing is getting stretched out. I'm not 100% on board with that idea. I've been kind of focusing more my attention on Saturday night
Right.
and where that 32-degree line is.
Right. But kind of like the eye of a hurricane, if you back up again 6 hours, I mean, we're basically in the eye of the storm at 12Z Sunday, 7 a.m. on Sunday. But because of the fast movement of that system off to the north and east, very quickly we get into that zone of the pressure gradient, which really begins to tighten up. So sometime toward the late morning or midday, all of a sudden those winds are going to start revving up.
Right in here.
And then all of a sudden down go the temperatures, and anything that's on your driveway or out in the street and the pavement that is wet, if it is not already frozen, is going to freeze up really rapidly, as we are going to be into a flash freeze type situation.
So I'm pulling up a sounding here, Joe, for New York City. It's a little small. You guys might not be able to see it on your screen as to what the temperature is. So we're looking at a profile of the atmosphere from the bottom up.
Now, this is based on the 18Z GFS.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is at 7 a.m. I hit a point as close as I could figure out where New York City is. It's got a temperature there, a ground temperature of 37,
Right.
which is not quite that high. At the same time, Philadelphia near Trenton, it's 39. Okay, so that's at 7 o'clock. But now we're going to go to 1 o'clock. Now it's changed over with some back edge precip if it's correct. So I'll pick a point near New York City as best I can, and it's 28. So
See?
you're talking about a temperature fall of almost 10 degrees in 6 hours, and then when we get to 7 p.m., it's down to 17.
Wow.
So there's going to be standing moisture around that's going to freeze. The only thing that the one thing that may help that alleviate that is the fact that if it will get so windy, it will be getting windy as we go through the day, and that
Right.
usually helps to dry, to
Right.
dry things out relatively quickly.
Very the analogy I use sometimes is when you were in elementary school and you were chosen to clean the blackboard, and you used the sponge and you'd sponge down the blackboard, and how would you enhance the drying process? Well, of course, you'd blow.
Right.
Blow on the blackboard. Same thing here. Those gusty winds may help, as you just mentioned, Joe, to get rid of some of that residual moisture on roadways. And boy, I hope it get rid of it fast, because those temperatures dropping, there are going to be some black ice issues all over the tri-state area, I think, by late Sunday and Sunday night.
So I want to show everybody, just illustrating this 32-degree line problem because of the freezing rain issue. And we're looking at the GFS. So the GFS actually is pretty aggressive. If the blue line is the last blue line as you go from north to south is 30, and then you have this sort of broken purplish line. That's the 32-degree line Saturday afternoon on the GFS at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. At 7 o'clock, it's got actually a 35-degree isotherm through New York City. The 32-degree line is to the north, and then it pushes that north of Poughkeepsie by 1 a.m., and then it starts to edge southward by 7 a.m., so that by 1 p.m., that freezing line is all the way to the east. But we got to be careful, Joe, with the GFS because it
Yeah.
has a huge warm bias.
Right.
That is an error that apparently has been built into the model. So.
I would choose the NAM model in this particular case.
And here's the NAM. So the NAM is so much. It's different, and this is the big issue with the NAM, is that the 32-degree line when the snow begins is running from along the New Jersey Turnpike. You can actually trail it down, maybe just north and west of Baltimore, Washington, north and west of Baltimore and Washington, north and west of Philadelphia. Not too far from Trenton, to about New York City, South Shore of Long Island. That's at 4 o'clock. At 7 o'clock, it kind of inches up like how you move in rush hour traffic.
Right.
Instead of being in South Brooklyn, you're in North Brooklyn, you're in South Queens.
Yes.
And at 10 o'clock, it's right along the North Shore of Long Island, cutting across New York City. At 1 in the morning, it looks like it's at White Plains. And then it just kind of stays there, only to drop back to the city by 7 a.m., and then out it goes 10 a.m., 1 p.m.
Right.
That's a much colder, low-level surface profile, and it is concerning.
Right. Well, and again, for the uninitiated, yeah, even though the temperatures would be at or even below freezing if you're north of that 32-degree line, and you're saying so, and you want snow, the problem is that while the low levels are cold, the upper levels are quite warm, very warm in fact.
Upper level map coming up.
And the upper levels, you may actually have rain at several thousand feet or more above the surface, coming down through that very shallow layer of cold air. And what happens to the rain? The rain eventually freezes up into little balls of ice, which would be sleet. And if the temperatures were cold all the way down to the surface level, and if we didn't have an initial shot of snow, that moisture that sleet would, the sleet would bounce rather than just actually congeal. Is that the word I'm looking for? Or accrete on the surface level. So,
well, there's your 850, the zero, and if you use, I kind of use this, Joe, as the line where I'm going to say you got to be sort of along or north and west of that line is where you're going to wind up with the foot plus.
Right.
And
right.
I think that makes that.
And this
that
is
makes
the NAM,
sense.
which is the colder model and is more agreeable to our idea or thought processes, as opposed to using the GFS, which probably would have the zero line a bit further to the north.
Right. And then that was, by the way, at 4 a.m. Sunday, and it starts dropping rapidly southeastward.
Right.
By 10 o'clock. This is where the GFS was forecasting a change over to snow again, if there's still some precip. The problem with this, Joe, is when we look at the NAM's precip shield, it still kind of wants to argue that after about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, the bulk of this is over with. Let me just get the wider picture on this. Now, here's your snow, by the way, as it comes out. So you folks, in the Midwest and in the Ohio Valley, so we're into tomorrow night, snowing in Chicago. Your low center is moving across Arkansas into West Tennessee, Western Kentucky. So we're at 10 o'clock Saturday morning, and this is 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon. You see where the snow is kind of arced across southern New York, Ohio, back through Indiana, Illinois. It's in here. This is at 7 p.m. So snow begins sometime between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. The NAM and the GFS kind of agreed on this kind of sort of faster movement.
Right.
And then you start to deal with those issues about the changeover to sleet and or freezing rain. And there's that big area of purple is where the NAM has mostly sleet, I guess, from Boston to just north of New York City, through northern New Jersey, northeastern PA. And then you wonder whether there's going to be a change back or not. It looks like it does change back in the lower Hudson Valley at least.
Right.
And in western Connecticut. And then the low starts to pull away to the northeast.
Right. And those winds, again, really blowing. You got to see what happens. I know up where I live. I'm not going to mention the electric company that serves me. I'm in Putnam County.
Yeah, well, so they might unplug you.
Figure it out for yourself. But it has a tendency, whenever the winds go above 40 miles an hour, in a situation like this, and I went through it 4 times last March with the nor'easters that we had. There's always some sort of a power outage. It would not be too great if you had a power outage later on Sunday or Sunday night if you don't have a generator, because It is going to get very, very cold, and I think, Joe, that by Monday morning, many areas are going to be hovering within a few degrees of zero. And I'm beginning to wonder now whether or not, even with sunshine on Monday, that we're going to see temperatures in many areas crack 10 degrees. By far and away, one of the coldest days that we've had in a while coming up to kick off next week.
You certainly have this setup where you're going to have this flow coming from northeastern Canada straight southwestward. This is how we do get some of the coldest temperatures that we've ever seen here.
Notice the axis of the trough here is into central New York,
1 a.m. Monday.
1 a.m. Monday, and by the time we get to...
That's as far as it goes.
That's
the NAM.
This is the NAM.
I'll switch to the
okay,
GFS.
Well, we don't need to do it, but I mean, it's going to be like a pendulum. It's obviously going to be over and past us to the east by 12Z, and that's when the upper level winds are going to line up with the surface winds, and that is when we're going to get the greatest penetration of cold air from central and northern Canada into our area. That's when we're going to get
that's right there at 12Z. Yeah, this vortex cuts off rather vigorously up in over Vermont and then drops into the Gulf of Maine.
Right. Don't be surprised that the temperatures on Monday don't go anywhere. You'll wake up and it's like 0 or 2 or 3 degrees, and then it's going to be a struggle just to make it upscale to the upper single digits or the lower teens. This is very reminiscent. And you remember this, Joe? Christmas Day, 1980.
Oh yeah. We had 2 below.
What amazed me on that day was that it was brilliant sunshine out there, like 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, where I was working. I was working for a private weather concern company back then, and we had a heat kit, the thermometer, giving us the outdoor readings. And I kept going back and forth every 20 minutes or so. I was just amazed just to see the temperature 7.
Yeah, I don't think it got out of the single digits.
It didn't.
I
don't think it did.
It was amazing.
It was unbelievable.
Let's just do a quick run of the long range because the pattern just stays very cold, cold to very cold. But there are going to be some odd things that might happen. As cold as it's going to be on Monday, we may very well, with the next weather system approaching, because of how it's setting up, we may very well reach up into the 40s by the time we get to Wednesday.
Right.
And that when we get into the next weather system, it's going to just warm up and rain.
Right.
But there's a fairly deep trough at the end of next week. And that's going to swing around, and you're going to have a series of short waves. I have to tell you, Joe, when I looking through this, in my mind, particularly toward the end, where you've got there's a look here to me that suggests that there's going to be, we've been saying how there's going to be one big dump of cold air. I still think the models are trying to figure out how they're going to pull that off, excluding what we're getting.
Right.
But maybe a bigger dump out across the Midwest. But I also think with this pattern set up like this, that somewhere along the line there's going to be something of real, even more important than this one, to impact with regards to snow.
This is not good enough for you.
No. It's just a different, more of a classic, more of something a bit more classic, like something diving down and cutting off.
1978.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I saw this last night on one of the runs.
It does. That what you have up there right now kind of is reminiscent of the short wave or the thing diving south and east through the Great Lakes and then just cutting off.
I want to find that one run here from last night. This one. Look at this. Now, sometimes in the long range, sometimes when you look in the long range, it kind of looks like Mickey Mouse is staring at you with 2 red eyes and a blue nose.
Yep.
But you've got this is a huge blocking signal. Okay, and sometimes in using these models, you get these where the model just kind of, sort of a run will come out and it will display its snapshot of what it thinks the atmosphere looks like, and then it'll disappear, and then it'll come back to it when we get into a shorter range.
Right.
So I saw this, and it just kind of blew me away because this is pure blocking in the Atlantic side, on the Pacific side, two big, gigantic upper highs across the Arctic region, and a polar vortex getting displaced southward toward Lake Winnipeg. This kind of, and a low about to head maybe over to the 50-50 position.
Right,
50
50
north,
50
50
low.
west. So I saw this. We'll put Mickey Mouse away. I saw this and it kind of caught my eye. It's not quite like that or as extreme on today's for the same time frame, because now we're 24 hours later. But it's not that dissimilar, and it certainly still has the pattern signature of colder weather coming into the eastern part of the United States as we head. This is February 1st now.
Right.
Everything, we're moving right along here.
Most respective groundhogs on that day are going to need an ice pick to get their heads out of the ground, I think,
Yes, if that winds up
for February 2nd.
winds up verifying. Yeah. So let me just come back to everybody on the chat board. By the way, tonight on our Facebook show, the Joe and Joe Weather Show, where Joe gets top billing, we are going to be we're going to live stream the new NAM, because that model, to me, and to both of us really,
is the model of choice.
Well, you and I heavily used it for so many years that we kind of know it, for like the back of our hand.
It's idiosyncrasy.
Yeah, and
I was not a big NAM fan until that storm in 2014. The only model that was yelling and screaming 2 to 3 feet of snow for the tri-state area. Well, all the others were like 6, 10, 12
are you talking about
inches.
the January 2016?
Was that the 2016?
2016. Yeah, it was
Really?
2016.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
The El Nino year was 15-16.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, I agree. It was the only one screaming about it. And I remember taking a lot of heat over it. By the way, James Cipriano, thanks for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Joe and I will split a hot chocolate. I remember taking a lot of heat from some people who I haven't heard from since. By the way. Anyhow, but yeah, the NAM is going to be front and center for both of us. Just running through some of the. James Vitale, you want Ocean County, New Jersey? Are we talking east, west, north, or south Ocean County? Are we west of the Parkway? Are we east of the Parkway? Or perhaps we're right on the coast? I'm half, I'm being, half being facetious. But you're generally in the area that's not going to get a whole lot of snow out of this. You might have snow at the start, but you should go, fairly quickly to rain. Maybe you put down a fast coating to it, at most an inch, and then go over to rain. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. And of course, we all know Ocean County. I think of Ocean County as like the Chile of New Jersey. If you know your geography in South America, Chile is a long, skinny country and covers a good deal of latitude from north to south. And Ocean County, well, I mean, it stretches quite a bit southward and kind of tapers off or narrows off down by the bottom, down by the end. And in some situations, you could have like a broad area of snow accumulation amounts from south to north, again, across Ocean County.
Right. David Schwartz says, I guess as we were looking at the long range, wonders if that pattern might favor Alberta Clippers coming southeast with light snow events every, of 2 to 3 inches, but a bunch of them. What do you think?
It's possible. And of course, in a lot of cases for us here in the Northeast, Alberta Clippers usually clip to the north, and what happens is that we get warm temporarily, and then all of a sudden we turn very cold as the clipper passes by to our north and east and drags in colder air behind it. But then again, if you get an Alberta clipper that clips well to the south, let's say off the mid-Atlantic coast, we have seen on more than one occasion the storm, once it gets its feet wet, suddenly billow up into a major storm and drop a quickie 4 to 8 or 6 to 10 inches on us. So that could also happen as well. So clipper systems can be tricky. Clipper systems don't necessarily have to be, just weak events or small events. They can sometimes be rather memorable events.
Joyce Mack, who's one of our Facebook regulars, is on tonight saying hi to both of us, that she likes that she gets an extra Joe and Joe show. Patricia B., Albany, the Bullseye. Yeah, Timothy Veltman, you should be happy. I saw you were talking about the SREF plumes giving you big numbers up there. That's something that Joe and I will look at when the new ones come out in about an hour.
And of course, one thing, Joe, we should mention also, along with the fact that there's, we look for run-to-run consistencies, what is going to happen with the storm that passes us by tonight? and how it develops.
Well,
to
that's huge. That's
Yeah.
a huge. That's a huge point. And I had mentioned this last week going into this, that the system from today really sets the table.
Right.
And this is why I'm a little bit, I'm concerned about a colder solution. So let's bring the maps back, and this is why. Hang on one second. So we'll go. I think the NAM will probably be the better one to work with here. So let's go to the NAM. Here we go. So here's why it's important. Earlier this week, the global models kept wanting to take the surface low up in upstate New York and in western Maine. And instead, Joe, there's a second, the primary low is kind of dying out. The secondary low is taking over there well to the east of the Virginia coast, south of Cape Cod. This thing is much further south. And I've been arguing that this winter, they want to go there. You know, the boundary seems to be wanting to set up, across the Mid-Atlantic states and then on out to the east-northeast.
Right.
And I'm wondering, and I continue to wonder, and that's why when I saw the European did last night, what the NAM did overnight on one of the runs, and now they're kind of going back and forth on this, I still think that this could wind up being a little further south and east. And in the last analysis, which would mean for a colder solution overall. I don't think it'll be cold enough to bring, say, all snow down to the coast, but it certainly would mean that the 32-degree line will be further south, and maybe that change line comes down a bit further to the south. Excuse me. That's my argument here.
Yeah.
That
And
it's
it's
going to want to go in the same place that this first system has suddenly wound up, which the global models have been terrible. Didn't have this until the last minute.
Yeah.
And now they have it again. So now we're going to watch and see what the next 3 or 4 model runs, what they do with this thing.
So we'll have it for all of you on Facebook when we come back on Facebook at about 9:15 or 9:20 or thereabouts, and it should be all the way out to 84 hours by about 9:45 or so.
You've got that right, sir.
And I'm so happy that we're back on standard time. You have no idea how Joe and I just suffer during daylight time, and
it's hard enough to wait up till 1 o'clock in the morning to get the European run now. I do not wait up for 2 o'clock in the morning,
No.
Europeans.
No,
even
don't.
in the month of March, if there's nor'easters involved or snow events,
And my
I'm
wife-
not doing it.
And my wife, who is a meteorologist, sometimes she's asleep upstairs. She'll come down 1:15 in the morning saying, "Are you not coming to bed? What are you looking at?" Sorry, dear.
But the European.
It's the European.
It's the European.
The European model.
Yeah, now I don't even have to go downstairs. I just have the phone in my hand and I'm looking at them.
Well, I could do that too, but to bring the phone when you're getting ready to go to bed, and then all of a sudden at 1:15, your wife says, "What are you looking?"
She's gonna yell. You're gonna get yelled at anyway.
No matter.
You might as well. Well, however it is, you're gonna get yelled at anyway. So what difference does it make?
And people out there saying, "Well, if your wife is a meteorologist, isn't she excited?" Well, she's been retired for a number of years, and I can tell you that a couple of years ago when it snowed on Christmas morning, you'd think that she would look out the window and say, "Look at that beautiful." She looked out the window that morning and she said, "Oh, poo."
Exactly. Well, I remember that morning because I woke up. I was at my daughter's up in northern Connecticut, and it was. It's actually the scenic picture at the top of my Facebook page.
It's gorgeous.
It was a beautiful Christmas morning. It was like being in a postcard, and I enjoyed it. All right, so here's the deal, folks. Roughly 9:20 on my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Cioffi. Joe and I will be with our regular Joe and Joe weather show, and we will be live streaming the NAM. If you don't have Facebook, I usually download it and then I re-upload it to YouTube. I will try to do that before midnight. It's not a guarantee, but if not midnight, at least you can watch it tomorrow morning to see our explanation of what the NAM model did, and we'll also have at least an indication of how many snow weenies have either jumped off the cliff or have decided that they're just going to wait another 6 hours.
They all jumped off the cliff, about 2-3 weeks ago, Joe, when they said winter was over. We're talking about like the splitting of the polar vortex, the
Right.
stratospheric warming or whatever like that, and it still wasn't good enough for a lot of people who were still saying, well, we told you to be patient.
The literal model readers are I have found over the years that they are actually the perfect contrary indicator. When the mass hysteria breaks out, it's kind of the madness of manias, the way the stock market works.
Right.
When everybody is selling at the same time, at some point the last person has sold, and the market, everybody thinks it's going to keep going down, and there are no sellers left,
Exactly.
and prices start rising. Well, the same thing here. It's not that different. You've got this mass psychology among non-experts. They look at a model, they look at a map, they make a decision without really going into it a bit deeper, and I kind of regard that as a contrary indicator. When they were all out screaming, I just knew that a winter storm was going to pop up, within a matter of a week or so, and now we're dealing with this.
Well, I was thinking more, admittedly, I will admit this, I wasn't thinking so much in terms of a winter storm, but I was saying weeks ago, I said we get toward the latter part of January or the beginning of February, something is going to happen. A major Arctic dump or a major switch back to much colder air. It has happened, but now, guess what? You got a bonus. Not only are you getting the colder air, you're getting a winter storm.
Yes,
Joe,
you are.
And Joe, what's our consolation prize?
Oh boy. Well, I've said that after Monday, depending on how this, what the outcome is here, I think there's a bunch of the winter is over crowd that kind of need to stand outside with a minimal amount of clothing on. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for the kind words, Edward Jazwinski. Really appreciate it. Telling us that he's enjoyed our show tonight. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for being here.
He's the guy who knows everything. I add the comic relief to this.
No. You and I. Christopher Chefchik. Can you pronounce that?
No, I can't. I'm not even going to. It's Swezik?
No, it's Chefchik.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it hitting Super Chat tonight. Jeff Yinkst, thanks also for hitting Super Chat tonight. So that's a couple of cups of coffee.
Okay.
For us. All right. Okay, so Facebook, tomorrow morning for Patreon members, I will be live streaming to members only. And we'll probably do that around either 10 o'clock or 10:30, depending on how much I get done tomorrow morning. But I want to kind of catch the 12Z NAM and maybe the 12Z GFS at the same time. So Patreon members that are on, look for that. And also, if I'm awake when I get home, I might sneak on. Okay, if I don't sneak on, I will put on a quick post. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I have a subscription platform. It's on Patreon. I'm just going to put up the link in the chat. If you want nonstop weather coverage, especially in a storm situation like this, you get a lot of stuff that I don't post publicly. You can message me anytime, and I will respond in a timely fashion. And you become part of a community that's grown to over 200 people now. It's only $2 a month. And there's the link to it. It's on the chat, or if you are watching, it's on the descriptor to this live stream or the descriptor to this video. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for being here. We'll see you tomorrow.
Or
later. No, we'll see you later on Facebook.
Come back on Facebook.
Right. Bye.